everyone and welcome to a very unique tutorial video. I say unique because I feel like this'll be less of a tutorial and more of a showcase video. Hell, tutorial isn't in the title of this video, so I'm sure that says a lot. Anyways, today's video will be highlighting a momentous occasion. I'm of course talking about Wormhole being added into the game, now with the official name of Warp. This is very momentous because of the negative track record NetEase has with new traits. However, it's in the game now and I honestly believe that this was well worth the wait. Not only is this trait super fun to use, but it's also very powerful and I feel it'll help out a lot of the hunter roster. So in this video, I wanted to sorta teach you all how to use Warp first before going into examples on how to use it. So without further ado, let's begin the discussion. While Warp can be very messy to use at first, it can be a really versatile trait to have in the right hands. I understand it can be hard to figure it out, so I'll break down how Warp works before getting into some tips. Warp has a starting cooldown of 40 seconds and afterwards has a cooldown of 100 seconds. Holding down Warp will cause an indicator to appear, showing you where Warp can be placed. You only have 60 meters to work with, so be mindful of where you place it on bigger maps. Selecting an area will cause one portal to appear where you planted it and another to spawn in front of you after a second of delay. Once placed down, these portals will stay up for 30 seconds. Entering a portal will cause you to go to the other portal. Depending on how far the portals are, it'll determine how quickly you can get to an area. After being put to the other portal, there is a 3-second cooldown before you can enter the portal again. Entering the portal again will warp you again, but break the portal behind you. The portal will also break if you click the ability button again or wait out the 30 seconds. When placing down your portals, it's really important to know where exactly your portal is. Unlike Bloody Queen's mirror, in which the placement of the mirror image is reflected by your position and where the mirror is placed, the place you put portal will be exactly where you drop it. One good way to help is by comparing the location of the portal to any ciphers close by. Portals cannot be placed inside of terrain and there is a certain amount of height your portal can be placed on. When you place down a portal, all survivors will hear and see the portal on the map, so be careful. You can be knocked back into your portal by any stun or knockback, so be careful. It's very important to cancel portal early if you're done using it. Finally, any recall abilities like Time Jump and Shadow Dance can help you return to your original position without taking the portal. And that about covers Warp and the surface level information. I'm sorry if it isn't much. At the end of the day, you still need to play with it for yourself to get a good idea. However, with that covered, we can now get into some example matches. I will go over 3 matches, one where I play the best hunter for it in my opinion, one where I had insane cipher defense with it, and my very first match with Warp. So let's not stall any longer and get into these matches, because there is a lot to unpack in them. Yep, out of all the hunters in this game, I think Percy will be the one to get the most value off of Warp. You'll see why later, however we need to have someone down to do so. We start our first chase with Roach, aka Priestess. It took a while, but we finally managed to get the down on her. I'm sorta wandering about because I can't find anyone, but at least it gives me time to prepare. Soon enough, Priestess picks herself up and that's when we warp. Unlike teleport, Warp not only allows Percy to teleport more accurately, but also allows him to teleport to places where ciphers are not around. And because Percy has the ability to see survivors after they pick themselves up, you will have no issue finding them again. This is why I feel this will be Percy's best trait. However, I still think Warp is extremely good on most of the hunter cast. Anyways, let's speed things up a bit, so Priestess and Enchantress make a poor choice. With Priestess dead and Enchantress down, we can go look for the other survivors. However, since they're so good at hiding, we end up going back to Enchantress. Since it's an Enchantress against a 50 energy Percy, she goes down very quickly. Cheerleader managed to sneak up to me trying to save Enchantress, but I find her and force her to leave. I decide to use warp to try and stop that cipher, but it didn't really go anywhere, so I broke the portal. Eventually, Enchantress dies from my camping and I'm now after the cheerleader. Cheerleader kites me around for a bit, but I eventually get a few hits off and end up downing her. Because she didn't have borrowed time, she stayed on the ground. While I could have killed Lawyer, I felt like killing Cheerleader instead. Using warp one last time, I teleport straight for Cheerleader and got the final down. This next gameplay is on Gamekeeper and revolved around a match I should have tied. Why? Well, let's start off with this chase with Journalist. While the chase goes on, is it really wrong to say that Journalist is probably Gamekeeper's biggest counter? Orfeo acts as a way to be able to avoid hook easily and allows Journalist to deal with traps. Another thing I think people sorta undersell about Journalist that I think is really good is the speed buff she has when Orfeo is nearby. A 10% speed buff to be exact, and it's actually really bonkers how you can get that speed. Makes it all the more sad Orfeo is used as a tanking option rather than a transition option. Don't get me wrong, Journalist is not meta or good, however she does have some tricks that makes her very annoying for some characters. Just because a character isn't good in the current meta doesn't mean they can't succeed if used well. Anyways, enough about Journalist, I eventually kill her and am left at one cipher remaining. Forward went down because of Tide, so I decide to chair him. It's at this point where I realize I need to juggle these survivors a bit until I can get the win. So, using warp, I immediately intercept Acrobat. Acrobat messes up the jump and goes down. Thanks to the 30-second timer, I managed to head back to the chair. My blind ass missed forward and went for Cheerleader, but I figured he was going to rescue. I tried getting him with hook, but he was too far away. Nevertheless, I do down Acrobat quickly and chair him again. Knowing Cheerleader is working on another cipher, I scare the others off before warping to her. I knock her down and am able to get back before the portal disappears. I do down forward and chair him, however it's at this point where my control over the ciphers run out. Unable to down the Acrobat, I return to the cipher to further trap it. Forward decides to pop it immediately, although I attack at that moment and secure the tie. With only 2 survivors left, I was able to get one more and end the game on a 3k. I wanted the 4k, but Cheerleader already knew where dungeon was anyways and leaving Acrobat was not an option. Nevertheless, I'm extremely happy with the results. Fittingly, the first match I ever played with Warp is my old main, Nightmare. While I played him just to try him again, I think Warp is another skill that can work extremely well on him. Warp is an amazing skill to be paired with hunters who are especially deadly at close range, and I feel Nightmare fits this criteria. I can 100% see this trait being useful on hunters like Ripper or Feaster. Sorry for getting off topic again, as you can see, this chase with Mind's Eye wasn't really interesting. While I drop my Raven, I scan the ciphers and see that they are planning on selling Mind's Eye. Wanting to save my teleport, I elect to use Warp on the middle cipher. Cord panics and tries to stun me with Flare, but I end up getting the hit anyways. While stunned, I see Antiquarian in the distance trying to rescue. I try throwing a raven on her before heading back, but I missed. My play heavily disrupted the decoding progress, especially since Antiquarian stopped going for the rescue. It's at this point that Mind's Eye is dead, so I leave her so I can go to the middle cipher again. I find Antiquarian and, while she dodges my first dive, a missed jump caused me to hit her. Deciding to stop the shack cipher from popping, I teleport to Coordinator and entertain her a bit. With dive, I was able to land a terror shock on Cord. After cheering her, I walk back to shack and end up running into Auntie again. Thanks to Raven, I was also able to land a terror shock on her. Knowing Seer will rescue, I use warp to travel back and intercept them. After dealing enough damage and knowing Auntie had flywheel, I warp back to chair her. Spotting out Seer, I force him to use Owl and plant a Raven on him before downing Auntie again. I then instantly dispatch of Seer and go back to Auntie. Cord and Seer decide to double rescue, but at this point, the damage was already done. While this was my first match with Warp, this experience really opened my eyes to this trait. And with that about covers Warp and the showcase of it. In my opinion, I love Warp a lot and I definitely think I will replace my standard Peeper build for Warp. While it won't guarantee a down quite like Blink or immediately allow you to travel like Teleport, its versatility opens up plenty of builds on a lot of the Hunter roster. In fact, I feel like Warp will absolutely help a lot of mid-tiers have a fighting chance in this new meta, like Bonbon and Feaster. Overall, a very powerful trait that was well worth the 8 years we had to spend waiting on a new trait. Anyways, that's about all for today. I hope this video sorta showed the power of Warp well enough. The next video will either be a video on Ivy or a video on a survivor. Until then, thank you so much for watching this video and I will see you all next time.